Hi, welcome back. I am Sage and you're watching 𝐊𝐴𝐼𝐴 TV live from Sydney. This is the Sectoral Pulse show by 𝐊𝐴𝐼𝐴 TV, a special show covering all sectoral movements from the markets for the day. Australian shares are trading in the red today, hit by losses on technology stocks, and technology sector witnessed pressure after a stronger than expected US inflation data raised concerns of a tighter monetary policy and set off further selling in growth stocks on Wall Street. Wall Street closed lower overnight as inflation data showed consumer prices unexpectedly rose by the most in nearly 12 years in April, fueling concerns over whether interest rate hikes from the Federal Reserve could happen sooner than anticipated. From the sectoral front, Aussie tech stocks tracked a slump on the Nasdaq and tumbled more than 5% to their lowest since October 5th, 2020. Accounting software platform Xero fell 10.8%, even as it reported higher full-year results, and sector heavyweight Afterpay also slumped 6.83%. Gold stocks are also trading lower as the precious metal snapped a 5-session winning streak after April's jump in US consumer prices buoyed the dollar and treasury yields, and gold miner Andromeda Metals fell 7.14%, followed by Bellevue Gold losing around 6.21%. Among individual stocks, the world's largest listed winemaker, Treasury Wine Estates, rose as much as 2.6% as it forecast range for 2021. Operating earnings was ahead of market expectations. And moving on to updates from the global markets, Asian shares faced a third day of losses on Thursday after a shocking rise in US inflation bludgeoned Wall Street and sent bond yields surging on worries the Federal Reserve might have to move early on tightening. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan lost 0.4% in the early trade, though liquidity was thinned by holidays in a number of countries. Japan's Nikkei fell 1.8% to the lowest since early January, while South Korea shed 1.1%. And New Zealand's benchmark S&P NZX 50 also fell 0.53% to 12,497.1 points. Asian markets had already been spooked on Wednesday when Taiwan stocks tumbled on fears the island could face a partial lockdown amid an outbreak of the virus. Nasdaq futures were trying to rally with a gain of 0.3%, while S&P 500 futures also added 0.3%. Wall Street was blindsided when data showed US consumer prices jumped by the most in nearly 12 years in April as booming demand amid a reopening economy met supply constraints at home and abroad. The jump was largely due to outsized increases in airfares, used cars and lodging costs, which were all driven by the pandemic and likely transitory. Fed officials were quick to play down the impact of 1 month's numbers, with Vice Chair Richard Clarida saying stimulus would still be needed for some time. Investors reacted by pricing in an 80% chance of a Fed rate hike as early as December next year. On the commodities front, the rise in yields in the dollar pressured gold, which eased to $1,814 an ounce and away from a multiple top around $1,845. Oil prices backed away from 2-month highs, hit after US crude exports plunged, and the International Energy Agency, or IEA, said demand was already outstripping supply. Brent was off 54 cents at $68.78 US a barrel, while the US crude lost 53 cents to $65.55. And moving on to the currency market, the dollar held gains on Thursday, supported by higher Treasury yields after a bigger than expected rise in US consumer prices fanned fears about an increase in inflationary pressure. And traders will now turn their attention to US weekly jobless claims due later on Thursday, and retail sales numbers on Friday to determine whether consumer prices will continue to rise. The greenback is likely to continue to rise as Some investors unwind bearish bets on the currency and reposition for more sustained inflation as more countries leave behind the coronavirus pandemic. The dollar bought 109.55 yen, close to its strongest level in 5 weeks. Against the euro, the dollar stood at 1.2083, holding on to a 0.6% gain from the previous session. The British pound bought $1.4068 and the dollar also rose to 0.9083 Swiss francs, close to a 1-week high. US consumer prices increased by the most in nearly 12 years in April as booming demand amid a reopening economy pushed against supply constraints. Benchmark 10-year US Treasury yields rose to a 5-week high of 1.7040%, which increases the appeal of holding dollar-dominated assets. Signs of stronger labour market and increased consumer spending would offer more evidence that inflationary pressure will pick up, which could push yields and the dollar even higher. In the cryptocurrency space, Bitcoin slid after Elon Musk tweeted that Tesla Inc. has suspended the use of Bitcoin to purchase its vehicles. Now for news that matters. Australia on Wednesday tapped Moderna Inc. for 25 million COVID-19 vaccine doses as it tries to speed up vaccination in people under 50 after deciding against AstraZeneca, whose jab has been linked to rare blood clots. The country had last month doubled its order for Pfizer-BioNTech's vaccine to 40 million shots, preferring it over AstraZeneca for its nearly 12 million people in that age group. Moderna said it will supply 10 million shots against the original strain of the virus this year and 15 million doses of its updated variant booster candidate in 2022. Australia's isolation strategy has helped it so far prevent a large pandemic impact, but its rollout of authorised vaccines from Pfizer-BioNTech and AstraZeneca has been slow. It has already walked back on its goal to vaccinate nearly all of its 26 million population by year's end. The prospect of Australia not achieving the objective until 2022 gained ground on Tuesday as its annual budget showed an expectation that its borders would not reopen until mid-2022, building pressure on Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who faces an election in a year. Australia's supply deal with Moderna is subject to regulatory nods for the booster shot as well as its original vaccine candidate, which is authorised for emergency use in individuals above 18 years of age in the United States. The US drug maker said it expects to submit an application for provisional approval of its vaccine candidate to the Therapeutic Goods Administration of Australia shortly. Thanks so much for joining us on that one. Your time is certainly valuable. And that is all from the Sectoral Update. Keep watching 𝐊𝐶𝐼NE TV for the latest news and market updates. And this is Sage signing off for now.